I certainly think the next billion-dollar company could be a one-man band. One guy with an army of AI.
And a lot of vibes.
A lot of vibes, a lot of vibe coding.
And that guy that's just working in his basement on, vibes and caffeine.
How long away are we from complete non-engineering person being able to build a moderately complicated, useful piece of software?
I feel like UI is the last frontier.
If we didn't know how to write software, I don't think we'd be able to prompt a model well enough to be able to build software.
Taste is a major issue in software.
That's the thing that the model hasn't got yet, and I am still required as a human in the loop because I have taste and I can make a judgment decision about design.
The idea was AI and the robots are going to come for the blue-collar jobs first, and white-collar was safe. Turns out it's like, you know what? We're going to go straight for programming, right? That expensive computer science degree that, you spent 4 years and several $100,000s, in the States at least, earning, that's what we're coming for first.
I think the blue-collar stuff is safe. That's my hunch. Right now, I'd be training to be a plumber.
So, Dean, we're in Paris. Bit of a quiz for you to kick things off.
Great, I love it.
How do you say podcast in French? You know this.
It's got to be just podcast.
Le podcast.
Le podcast.
You were so close.
Oh.
One of my favorite things about learning a foreign language is that you have to relearn a fair bit of your own language.
So true.
Yeah. I bring that up because I'm thinking about, the news headlines are constantly talking about job loss coming. Job loss is coming. And, my mental model for thinking about what jobs is AI coming for first, at a very simplistic level is, I think, well, what is AI? It's tokens in, tokens out, words in, words out, basically. So the first jobs to go might be the jobs where the input is words and the output is more words. So translation, for example, might be one of the first to go. Any in your mind that you think might be on the chopping block?
I'm thinking more, about the last to go. So if you invert the question and think about, as you just said, words in, words out. So the usual analogy would be crap in, crap out.
Yeah.
So the people that write words well, are they the ones that are most likely to keep their job because they get the best quality output from AI? We were talking about this earlier in terms of software development and how you prompt a model to write. Well, actually, software development is irrelevant. We'll cut that. We were talking about this earlier in terms of how you prompt and good quality prompting producing better quality results. So I don't know. I think you're right. I think language, things like translation are probably gone. But then people that write well in English, is that going to produce a better quality result in French if I'm doing translation? And so therefore, there's still a role for people. It needs to be the ones that write well.
Yeah. No, I think for sure. I also think that people tend to overestimate the speed at which AI is just going to rip through the job market
For sure.
as a whole. And I think part of that is, the tech comes largely from Silicon Valley, right? There's this concentrated group of people living in an echo chamber. And I think what they don't realize is that software development and technology is one of the last remaining unregulated fields, largely, right? There's some amount of regulation that goes into it, but for the most part, if you want to write a program and push it to AWS and serve it to millions or billions of people around the globe, you don't need a license to do it. And so I think that they kind of look inward and then extrapolate and assume that because their industry is so easy and flexible to develop in, that other industries are as well. But we know from working in a regulated industry that the world is super messy. So in my mind, the final boss of AI isn't really human intelligence, right? Surpassing human intelligence. The final boss of AI is actually bureaucracy, right? And we were talking last night about this new website called, was it Rent a Human?
Rent a Human. Yeah.
Rent a Human, where now agents actually need humans to do tasks that they can't do. And one reason is they need physicality. You need to go to the store and see if this product's in stock or try and, negotiate with a person. But another reason is that there's bureaucracy involved too. An agent can't open a bank account, right? There's KYC, for example. So I think there's an oversimplification and a bit too much optimism about how quickly AI is going to replace humans in that aspect.
Yeah, so bureaucracy has always been the office of no. And as you say, it's typically required a human identity to get through that bureaucracy. I think it's one of the reasons enterprise adoption of AI has been slow, because people want to deal with people and they don't want to hear that this product's going to be supported by AI rather than there's a human on the end of the phone.
Why do they want to deal with people?
It's a really good question. I think it's what people are used to and comfortable with. I don't think people are yet comfortable with engaging with machines, certainly not with engaging with AI. So I think that's something that's possibly generational. I think it will definitely come with time. Eventually, we'll all get used to to be honest with you, I want to deal with AI. I don't want the human. The AI is going to be able to get the answer faster, and I'm going to get reality and truth most of the time.
Yeah, that for sure. I also think there's an aspect of human interactions which is kind of undervalued and is kind of being surfaced for me now, and that's the notion of what I've heard called discretionary noncompliance. When you're dealing with an agent, you're dealing with code, and code has guardrails, and it knows when it can say yes and it knows when it can say no. If I need to go to the local bakery and get a loaf of bread and they're just about to close, right? And I'm dealing with a person, I can say, would you mind? I know it's 5 o'clock, but I just need a baguette. Can I have a baguette? Discretionary noncompliance. They might say, no problem, come on in. If you're dealing with an agent who's been coded to say your shop hours are 9 a.m. to 5 p.m., like you're not going to be able to negotiate with that.
Isn't that though where traditional programming, in a sense, where you might have this concept of 9 to 5 becomes a bit fuzzy in the AI world, and actually AI can cope with that. AI has been trained on scenarios where if it's 5:01 or 5:05, it's okay. It's about 5 o'clock. Is that because I'm finding one of the real values of AI is that fuzziness that it provides, which traditional programming was much more pure logic.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It would be an interesting test to do an experiment with, and actually to build that case in a prompt and say, would the boulangerie stay open for an extra 5 minutes for you? I suspect it might,
Really?
Yeah, I suspect it might.
Maybe depending on how it was actually coded.
Yeah, if it had been coded on you're running a business,
Right.
which is based on reputation,
Yeah.
and it's based on giving people a good customer experience, if it's been prompted in that way, I think it would do the right thing. We should do an experiment. Maybe if we have time to do it, we can put the results of the experiment in this video. But I think we should try this on a prompt and see what would happen.
That's interesting. So it really depends on what you're optimizing for, and you have to be careful not to optimize for just the wrong things, maximum profit, maximum regularity.
You're optimizing for the human interaction case, because that's what you're saying.
Right.
You're saying you would rather deal with a human because humans behave differently. But actually, if you have a good quality AI prompted to behave like a human, actually, would you better notice the difference?
Good question. I think it depends on the industry. Thought experiment. You go to a cocktail bar, right? It's Friday night. You feel like going out for a cocktail before dinner.
You want
a Negroni, right? Here's a proposition. I've got a cocktail bar which is completely robot operated.
Okay.
All right. You go there. You don't see any bottles, right? There's nothing exposed. There's just a machine. You go and you talk to the machine and you say 1 Negroni, please, and I want Antico Formula vermouth, right? And I want special kind of gin, a French gin. And it goes and it makes you the Negroni, and you don't see what's happening. It's just super quick, and it gives you a Negroni, and it's even in a to-go cup. Is that the experience you want?
No, of course not.
And it costs half the price.
It's a trick question. Of course, it's not the experience. Did you say it's half the price?
It's half the price.
Take it. No, seriously, I again think that's down to how the model has been prompted and the values that it's been told it is to represent.
Okay.
So I think that AI, a well-crafted AI platform in that use case would put it in a nice glass. It would make sure I have crystal clear ice. All of the things that you want from a great user experience are going to a bar. So I get the thought experiment, but I don't think it's a fair one.
But what about the conversation with the barman? What about watching him prepare and smelling the
Okay,
zest of
that's
orange?
different. Yeah, okay, that's different. That's about having a joint experience socially, which is not possible to do with AI. I agree. I'm not sure that I'd want to go to a bar that is run by AI, probably for those reasons. And to me, that would feel a bit weird.
Yeah. There's a coffee shop in Paris. It's called The Coffee. It's actually a Japanese.
It's not Le Coffee.
No, it's The Coffee. I think it's a Japanese coffee shop.
Okay.
And it has great coffee, but I won't go there because your first interaction when you walk in the door is you're faced with an iPad. There's a barista right behind the counter, but you're supposed to place the order at the iPad, and then the barista will make. It's like this hybrid approach, like half tech, half human.
I'm annoyed already. Okay.
Right, and so and oftentimes the barista won't even say hi because talk to the iPad. It's like I don't want to talk to the iPad. This is my 10 minutes of socialization. You know what I mean? I'd like to at least say hi to you and so you go and you place your order on the iPad, and then the barista will make it, and then they'll bring it to the table. But there's something so unsatisfying about it. And for me, this is an example of technology that is optimized for the wrong things. Now, maybe I'm in the minority because they seem to always be full.
Yeah, I'm not so sure you're in the minority. I wonder whether, again, it's a generational thing. Very interesting to know what a late teens, early 20s would say about that, and whether they're looking for that same social interaction that you are, or whether actually they're happy to have a very efficient experience, just getting the thing that they're after.
Right.
My experience of people in that certain, that sort of early 20s, is it Gen Z? It's a little bit more like that. It's a little bit more functional in terms of those sorts of experience. So I wonder whether, as our generation gets older, I wonder whether that just becomes the norm. And actually maybe the AI bartender is the norm, becomes the norm as well. And the social interaction is from the other people at the bar, not the person whose job it is to serve the drinks. Maybe the delineation of, I suppose if you think about it historically, why is it that you have a chatty bar manager in the first place? It's because he or she wants to create an environment where people want to come and have a drink. But actually, if you change that so that it becomes come here with your friends and have drinks served really quickly, maybe that's just the new model now.
I think if I understand you correctly, what you're suggesting, which is interesting, is how do you, from an experience that works quite well for people, how do you extract the functional requirements in a meaningful way? How do you make sure you're capturing everything that's giving value to people and not just the superficial aspect?
Yeah.
Because I know a few companies that are trying to do pre-mixed to-go cocktails or a machine that makes you a cocktail. And I always think you're missing what makes an experience so special, right, at a cocktail bar. It's not just about getting the perfect cocktail to go in a cup and saving money. That's not what it is.
But it's the environment and it's the people it's interesting you use the word superficial, because actually that's what the bartender social experience is, right? He's not your friend. He's there to take your money.
Well, he's part
and
therapist
give you a drink.
as well,
Okay,
right?
he's part therapist, but it's not reality. It's a superficial social relationship. It's not the same as you being there with your friend or your family or your wife or whatever, having a drink and interacting with that person. I don't know, maybe Gen Z's got a point. Maybe actually fast functional service is the right model, and I'll bring my own social interaction.
Right. I was recently in Japan, and it feels like there's a whole country full of Gen Zers over there because they have absolutely no problem interacting with technology. And, from the outside, at first it looked a bit depressing to me. It's like you go into a ramen shop and everybody's out front with they call them the jihankis, these distributors. You put your money in, you try and decipher, which button in Japanese says yuzu ramen, right? And so you get your ticket and you go inside and you have all these businessmen in suits and nobody's speaking to each other. Everybody's just slurping their noodles, right, in solitude.
Haven't the Japanese always been a bit like that, though, where they're very, very comfortable using technology? And then that's been the case for as long as I can remember, I think 40 or 50 years. That's not a new thing.
You're probably right. But they're using it in a setting where you would expect a little bit of conviviality. Like, you don't hear a lot of laughter. You don't hear spontaneous conversation. So I don't know. Your comment about the Gen Z made me think maybe it's not just generational. Maybe it's cultural as well.
Yeah, I was just going to say everything you've just described sounds like a Japanese culture to me rather than necessarily a generational thing. So maybe every generation is coming along with a slight twist on the culture, and that's what we're seeing rather than it being anything to do with age. It's just cultural shift.
It also makes me think about there's this Hopper painting. I think it's called the Automat. There's a woman.
Oh, yeah.
Do you know the painting? There's a woman sitting in the Automat,
Yeah.
which used to be, you're sitting inside of a vending machine basically. All the food's in these glass cases, and you put your money in, and then you can open it up, and you can sit down and eat it by yourself. To me, it's such a sad experience. I don't know.
Yeah, that's cultural and generational, though. I guess I don't know. I got a foot in both camps. I sort of like the idea. I like the old school bartender. For me, it's part of the experience that a good bar person will make or break a bar. Generally speaking, for me, but I can also see there are times, particularly when the place is busy. I just want to drink now. I don't have to stand 3 people deep and wait 10 minutes to get served for a drink. So there's a line to draw where I like the optimization.
Yeah.
Maybe there's different bars for different people. Maybe that'll become the thing. You can go to the bar with humans, or you can go to the bar with AI depending on your mood.
Yeah, I think the original cocktail bars in America were pharmacies. Basically, you'd go to the pharmacy,
Right.
and you'd order a
Soda
Sazerac, or you'd order an old fashioned. And I think it was typically men who would go there after work before facing their families. It's like I need a little something.
Some things don't change
before I go home. So there was that aspect of the barman being the therapist. Speaking of therapists, that's one of those jobs that I don't see being disrupted immediately by AI. And I often think about, what's the low-hanging fruit for AI? You talked about software development. Why is AI coming for software development first? I've got a few theories about this, and like, why is it not coming for other jobs? I think software has a very clear definition of when it's working and when it's not.
Mm-hmm.
You can deterministically prove that code is working. You say when this input goes in, this should be the output, and you have a very clear definition of done and a very clear definition of success. But not all jobs are like that. And take a therapist, right? Like, how would you even begin to train an AI on being a good therapist, and how would you judge whether or not an AI is a good therapist or not?
It's a very good question. I wonder whether the answer to that comes down to access to private data sets. The problem with there is you have client confidentiality. So actually accessing good quality private data sets, which I imagine would be a psychiatrist or a psychologist's notes, basically, file notes on people. You'd need to see that, wouldn't you? And then again, how do you judge whether it's any good or not? Well, I suppose you can utilize the notes of the top known to be very, very good psychologists and psychiatrists. I suppose you could use that. I do see the value in it if you can solve the how do we train it problem, because I think particularly with something like therapy, I believe humans may be more honest and open with a machine than they might be with another human, because the machine is not going to judge you. So I think that there's huge value in maybe going there, but the challenge is going to be around the data sets for that. I think it's another reason why LLMs have been so successful at coding is there's a ton of it available for free on the internet. So the training material was easy. Also, it was built by engineers. So naturally, there's going to be a bias to, can I make this work for me and solve my problems? I think that's a big part of why engineering is being tackled, software engineering is being tackled first. But now that those models are available, access to the right data set, I think it could make a great therapist.
I think so too, but I don't think anybody's going to attack that problem, because you could imagine the legal minefield that would be if your bot is sued in court because somebody committed suicide. Yeah. So I think that's going to be one of the last frontiers. So I think there's a ton of jobs that are safe out there for a long time. It's because they're protected by a number of things. They're protected by regulation. They're protected by bureaucracy. The world is a very messy place, and I think that technologists tend to kind of oversimplify the rest of the world, because their world is quite simple by comparison.
Do you think the physical stuff is still safe for a while yet?
I would say 15, 20 years ago, the view of AI was it's coming for blue collar jobs first. I think that was consensus. When you watch
in the 50s, that was the case.
Did you ever watch the Flintstones?
Oh, yeah, of course.
Was it the
And
Flintstones
the
where they had
the Jetsons.
the
was
Jetsons? Sorry, not the Flintstones. They had the tech, and the tech
Yeah.
was always, was it like a
Domestic
pterodactyl
chores.
that was like replaced the shower and whatever.
That was the Flintstones.
That was I'm
Yeah.
mixing my
You're mixing
my
them
50s
up.
cartoons.
Yeah, the Jetsons was the one where they had robots doing all of the physical domestic tasks.
Right. And so, yeah, the idea was AI and the robots are going to come for the blue collar jobs first, and white collar was safe. Not how it turned out. Turns out it's like, you know what? We're going to go straight for programming, right? That expensive computer science degree that, you spent 4 years and several hundred thousands of dollars, in the States at least, earning, that's what we're coming for first. That was quite a shock.
Yeah, I agree. And actually, it's interesting you say science. That's one of the big ones, isn't it? I mean, look at the AI now in medical science is doing phenomenal work. That's the doctors. That's the one that I thought would be safe for a very long time, but actually, I don't think it is. The diagnosis now. There was something in the press about a month or so ago on, I think AI picked up cancer in someone's MRI scan that like 4 doctors had completely missed, and the machine said, "No, I think that this is something," and it was. So I think that medicine is the thing that was like the last bastion of technology. Never going to take it. I think actually it's right up there next to programming now.
Right, and so does it need to then how is it going to find its way into the blue collar jobs? Is that via robotics? That's a tricky question.
Yeah, the problem with the physical world is just the difficulty of getting technology to work well in those physical environments. So things like, I've been watching I've been following robotics for a little while, and the battery size is a big problem. There are some real challenges around getting motors small enough and fast enough to be able to manage things like balance, the reactivity that you need from fine motor skills. It's really hard to do. Even a real basic task, like carrying a tray of things, is we take for granted all the time. But it's actually quite a complex thing to try and get a machine to do. So I feel if you look at robotics technology and how that's evolved, it's actually been quite slow, and it's difficult to see any kind of leap forward moment that happens, like a leapfrog moment where all of a sudden it's gone up a gear. I just can't really see that happening because the physical world is so difficult. I don't see very, very small, very high capacity batteries coming along anytime soon because chemistry is chemistry. There's not a lot you can do about it. So I see that physical side of things. Robotics has to be the answer, I think, but I can't see that technology keeping up. So as you say, I think the blue collar stuff is safe. That's my hunch. Right now, I'd be training to be a plumber, probably. That would be my strategy. I think, anything else that's to do with thinking or language is in serious trouble.
Yeah, and the feedback loop in the physical world is much slower because you've got to produce the robot. Now, a portion of the robot is just software, but if you design the joints wrong and it doesn't have the mobility that you want,
you don't have evolution.
What are you going to do? Atoms are kind of annoying, right? You got to go back and get to build the thing again. With software, it's just like, just change this line of code and test it. So the feedback loop is much faster with software than it is in the physical world, which I think is one reason why the progress is slower.
That's an interesting thought. I wonder then whether the answer that the leapfrog moment in the physical world will come from an intelligent material that is able to change shape or do something so that you have a form of evolution, and the joints, once the machine works out it's not actually the best design, it can actually tweak itself, re-engineer itself in some way, and then you have the benefit of evolution at machine speed.
Right. We're seeing some of that now, which seems like the next breakthrough in LLMs with like recursive self-improvement, which is kind of scary. Because it used to be like, okay, you train your model, and then if it wasn't right, go back and adjust the weights. And now like models that are actually improving on their own without human intervention is very exciting, very scary as well.
But I wasn't familiar. So who's doing work in that area? Do you know?
With recursive self-improvement, I think all the frontier models are doing it. The first big breakthrough after 3.5, I think, was like the reasoning models. It was like 01 and stuff like that. And I think the next big step function is going to be the recursive self-improvement, where you don't actually come in and intervene. but the models are kind of learning on their own by all the questions that people are asking them. Are you getting the answer right? Are you getting them wrong? And then kind of iterating on that and getting better and better. Ultimately, hopefully the models will be able to just predict the next versions of the models and say, here are the weights, right? But that's probably a long way off.
Oh, I don't think it's that far off. I'm sure I read something about some work in that direction. One of the frontier models, I think it was OpenAI, who are now, one of them just announced this fairly recently, saying that the current model did not have a lot of human interaction in terms of how the model was learning.
Okay. But compare that speed now in a relatively unregulated industry. Now, people have come after, like Europe, right? They've come after AI, and they came out with this edict saying you cannot train a model with over 1 billion parameters without authorization from the state. And I think they quickly walked that one back because they realized that by the time that they come out with the text, like they were already larger models. Compare that industry with. And actually, let me cue this up with another quiz. If you're,
I love a quiz.
All right. By the way, I'm going to formulate this. You'll be able to guess the answer, but it's a fun one. In the States, which occupation requires more training? An EMT or a salon assistant that does like shampoos?
Okay. So it's the salon assistant.
It's the salon assistant that does shampoos. I Googled this before we came. It was like 200 hours of training versus I think it was like half of that to become an EMT. So that's wild in and of itself. But like these are part of the barriers to AI coming in and replacing any. You could easily imagine AI learning how to shampoo and maybe doing a massage as well.
Well, does this come down to the barman thing? Is the person it's a human to human interaction that has very subtle and complex motor skills required versus learning how to drive a machine. So actually, as I think about it, it's the answer is that it takes longer to train to be a salon shampooist than it does to drive a...
No, the EMT, sorry, it might be an American acronym.
Okay.
It's like an emergency medical technician, I think.
Okay.
So they're providing first aid to people in critical condition.
Okay. I'd missed the American... And okay. Wow, that is amazing. But again, is it because the emergency medical people are utilizing machines?
I don't think there's any sort of overarching logic to it. I think regulation is very jagged.
Right.
And I think that, different industries have different lobbying power. And so you end up with these little industries that are like mini cartels, right? Where look at what happened with the dock workers. Did you hear about that in the States where basically they were trying to automate the handling of giant containers, like container ships would come and it's like, we can just automate this. Let's just have a robot take them on and off. Turns out there's like a very small number of people that had amazing influence
And power, yeah.
and they had this little lobby and like nothing could have been done about that. So I think that's one of the forces to be reckoned with when it comes to automation and AI. It's the world is very messy, and the world was the rules of the world were built together over hundreds and thousands of years. And there's a lot of regulation in there. There's a lot of red tape and there's a lot of bureaucracy that. An AI is not going to be able to just come in and say, I'm going to replace this job.
I think it's one of the reasons why AI adoption in enterprise has been so slow, because the first thing that the humans do, the things that the bureaucracy does, is look at how do we control, manage, and monitor this, and how do we govern it. And actually, I think what's quickly being realized is that's actually very, very hard. It's very hard to govern AI. Putting guardrails in place is it's possible, but it's extremely difficult. And I think this is a big barrier. And the larger the enterprise, typically the more governance there is. So I wonder whether that gap is going to mean that the small and medium-sized businesses can just begin to very rapidly outperform the overly governed organizations. And we may even see this in fields like banking, thanks to cryptocurrency and other ways of transferring money that are immediately available and very lightly or not regulated at all in some cases. And I wonder whether now is the moment for the small and medium enterprise. I think someone was talking, a few people have been talking recently about the next $1 trillion company being a one-man band. And I wonder how actually real that may well be. I certainly think the next $1 billion company could be a one-man band. Certainly the next $10 million company, it's probably already happened. One guy with an army of AI.
And a lot of vibes.
A lot of vibes, a lot of vibe coding. And I wonder whether that's the moment, that's the thing that's actually going to happen. It's the small business, anything from 1 to maybe 100 people, where governance tends to be light and often doesn't exist at all in startup world, completely disrupting the status quo of the highly, highly regulated, governed 10,000 employee company that has to have that because of the nature of how many employees. If you think about it, the regulation, the governance only exists because of humans.
Yeah.
And that's the thing that's getting displaced.
Totally. And that guy that's just working in his basement on, vibes and caffeine, he's got nothing to lose. Like, look at Google. Google invented the transformer.
Yeah.
And they were one of the last to market. Everybody's like, what's Google's AI play? It's like, no, they had way too much to lose. Like, could you imagine the meetings with lawyers saying, like, what if somebody asks a medical question and our AI gives the wrong advice? Right?
Yeah.
It took them a long time to integrate AI, and they still haven't done a great job into Google. Like, you Google something, and you still get 5 sponsored links, right, before you get a decent. And sometimes you'll get an AI-generated answer, which is often typically bad from an article that was written 5 years ago. Maybe it's kind of out of date. It's like, you guys invented this stuff. What's going on? But I think your point is valid. It's that they've got way too much to lose, and they're too highly regulated, and they've got too many lawyers, and that's sandbagging them.
Yeah, their own processes, which were there to guardrail the humans, are actually getting in the way and preventing them from innovating. But that has always been the case, and that's why big companies have always bought little companies, and that's why little companies are the ones that innovate. Big companies can't innovate. That's been the case for a while. But I think what's happened is the little company's ability to innovate has now accelerated so much because AI is 20xing everybody's productivity now, that the gap is getting broader. I'm trying to follow through in my head that line of thought. Okay, where's it going to end up? I'm trying to think, where does that end up? And actually, I wonder whether the answer is a lot of the bigger companies are going to have to break up. So you'll take a large organization, which at the end of the day is generally a collection of departments, and whether that company needs to be broken up into 20 companies for each per product or department or whatever.
Each one independently can be sued without taking down the whole.
There's that, but the governance framework within each one can probably be a lot lighter. Yeah, I don't know. I'm trying to. It's a crazy world.
The governance framework, that's one that I've struggled with recently, and going through ISO and all of those processes, is what does our policy look like? And I'm sure a lot of companies in our space or highly regulated companies are having a similar challenge. It's like, how do you balance safety and governance with innovation? Because it's so easy to just say, let me just throw this in ChatGPT, right? And it used to be that you could allow list or like ban list a piece of software because it was clear which software was AI and which wasn't. It was clear that ChatGPT was AI. It was clear that Claude was AI. But now what's happening is a lot of companies are just kind of slipping AI features into corporate software.
Shadow AI.
Like Jira did this. Slack just did this. I logged into Slack and it's like, would you like to use AI to search? And I'm like, what happens if I say yes? Right? And it wasn't toggle this on in admin settings. It was just like, go start firing, right? So if I had run an AI search in Slack, like what would actually happen? And then like you need to bring in, your head of compliance and governance to look at that. Where is the data hosted? Are they recording this? Are they training on your data and all of that stuff? Meanwhile, it's presented in an interface that's available to a junior developer. Has he been trained to turn down AI? So it's kind of slippery.
I think that there's a lot of trust that's been placed in companies like Slack, Microsoft, and others that have recently been found to be pulling stunts like that and pushing shadow AI into companies. And this is not the first time that Slack has done something like that and got into quite a lot of public trouble for it. Zoom did the same thing, I think. Do you remember they said, "Oh,
Yeah.
we're recording everyone's calls now." The hell you are. I wonder whether has Slack come under public scrutiny over this? Have you seen anything?
I haven't seen
No.
it. I think they waited long enough where it's become the new norm. Like you can do,
Right.
everybody's adding AI features, and I feel like AI. I forget who may have been Paul Graham who said that technology is he hates it when he's misquoted, but I'm probably going to misquote him here. I think technology is what we call anything new that doesn't quite work yet.
Right.
And so like airplanes used to be technology, refrigeration used to be technology, databases used to be technology. Nobody says today, what's your database strategy, right? But they'll say, what's your AI strategy? How are you leveraging AI? But soon people won't talk about AI as a category anymore because we'll assume that it's been integrated into every layer of software.
It's not cutting edge anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's interesting. So to anyone watching this that didn't know, so we use Slack at Umony, and this popped up on you. It just said, "Hey, do you want to use our AI search now?" Was that? It was
Yeah,
like
and then it gave
literally-
me an example search,
Right.
and it was like, what did I accomplish this week?
Right.
And I was dying to click that button. I really wanted to know what I accomplished.
We all want to know the answer to that question.
Yeah. Oh, zinger.
Yeah. So immediately, obviously, this caused a bit of a concern whether that had been rolled out to not just one thing goes to the CTO and you know what to do, but if that had gone out to a more junior employee and what the hell's going on. So did we have to log into the administration control
I
panel?
logged
and
into the
switch it?
admin panel to see like was there a setting that was turned on somewhere, and it wasn't even turned on. We didn't even have access to it in our they have the product tier matrix of functionality, and no, we weren't supposed to have access to it.
It was like a free trial. Yeah. It's dangerous. We were not happy about it, Slack. Bad move.
But it's everywhere now. So it's like, AI is almost like to software what, water is to a fish. Like fish are unaware that they're in water. And I think pretty soon we're just going to accept the fact that AI is everywhere in software. And I think it's going to change a lot of people's workflows and processes when it comes to things like, ISO certification and stuff like that. It's like, what's your AI strategy? It's like, well, AI is everywhere. It's not just one tool that we use. It's infiltrated every piece of the stack.
It's very true. It's like asking a fish, what's your water strategy? It's kind of a pointless question now. Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
I mean, my view is that there's ways to mitigate it. I kind of think of the end state, right? Mm-hmm. So the end state is AI is everywhere. And so what are the real guardrails that you need to have in place, right? Instead of thinking, what am I going to allow? What am I going to ban? I think about it in terms of boundaries. I think about the fact that nobody's laptop where these AI tools are running should have access to production data. They shouldn't have access to production at all. Customer data should not live there. I think you can come up with maybe 3 or 4 commandments, and then my view is that you consider the person's work computer completely brickable. And if you're willing to make that concession and say, if my computer goes rogue, if it gets infected, if something happens, if my computer should be completely brickable, and it shouldn't infect the larger network, right? There's vibe coding has led to tons of new malware and infections, and I kind of feel like there's this security Armageddon that's about to happen where every single latent security flaw that's out there in the world is about to be discovered, right? Fortunately, on the other hand, we've got these amazing tools now that are really good at scanning. So there's going to be, I think there's going to be a period of extreme instability in software where we realize that, okay, these OSs had 0 days, and these APIs and these corporate pieces of software all had these 0 day.
There's got to be plenty 0 days out there, right? But by the same token, we can have AI scanning for those and fixing. So you're right, it's probably going to be Armageddon for a while as these things are discovered, but it's also going to be patch fest and updates coming in like crazy as they get fixed by the AI. So for me, it's becoming AI versus AI.
Totally.
And you've got the good AI and you've got the bad AI, and they're going to be kind of fighting each other out for a while.
And this is why I don't really buy into the kind of apocalyptic views that the media is constantly pushing. I mean, I know that it's clickbait. I know what it sells. It sells. The headlines are very dramatic, but stuff like this typically tends to trigger an immune response, right? And I think that we underestimate our ability as humanity to adapt to these difficult situations where we see, oh, what's going to happen when, this system gets hacked or that system gets hacked, or, maybe it finds its a vulnerability in a core protocol of the internet. It's like, well, there's going to be an immune response that, maybe there's going to be some short-term trouble and disruption, but I'm typically of the optimistic camp where I think it's actually going to make everything stronger in the end.
Long term, it has to.
Yeah.
Because we're just accelerating that evolution of the software bugs and vulnerabilities being discovered and patched. We're just accelerating the discovery and patch process, right? So it just gets us to a stronger end state faster. How do you think that instability, that I think you used the word Armageddon, how do you think we'll experience that? What's going to happen? What sorts of things will happen?
I think that every hacker now in North Korea has access to a frontier model or some version of it, which they've tweaked to remove the guardrails, and they'll be able to just have these things running as agents, right? It's not going to be one-off prompt. It's just going to be some open claw, something that's out there, like probing systems, trying to find a vulnerability. There's Andrei Karpathy, who discovered that all his Internet of Things items at his home are extremely vulnerable, terrible security. They never expected somebody to have this system that had human intelligence, constantly probing and figuring it out. So he's used it for good. He's orchestrated his systems in interesting ways, but you can obviously think about how that could be used for evil. And I'm sure that our adversaries are doing that right now. So I think there's going to be a period in which they find a ton of vulnerabilities. Those vulnerabilities are going to have to be patched. And there's going to be a constant, cat and mouse game where both sides have amazing tech that's pushing in opposite directions.
I agree. My question was more about how do you think we'll experience it as humans? What sorts of things will happen? Do you think we'll have flights cancelled, people's operations cancelled? Will cars stop working for a bit? How do you think it's going to disrupt our everyday life, given we've become very reliant on those types of Internet of Things technologies we all have them in our homes? Is my house going to be boiling hot when I get home because my thermostat's been cranked up?
Right. That's a great question. I think the attack surface area now is just almost infinite. And that's the disadvantage of there being infinitely scalable human intelligence available to purchase. And it's practically free at this point, to be honest. So everything becomes attackable. Everything becomes vulnerable. And I think we're going to very quickly find out which security systems are security theater, right? Which ones are soft, which ones are hard. But yeah, breaking into, there's software everywhere. There's software in the cockpit of an airplane. There's software in your refrigerator. There's software in some toasters now even. All of that is going to become subject to
vulnerable
to hacks.
You mentioned something there. You were talking about effectively infinite compute, and it's basically free. Let's explore that, because I wonder whether we're in a period at the moment of mass subsidization in effect. So if we look at the amount of money that the frontier model companies have raised and are continuing to burn, I have the $200 a month OpenAI plan, which I use to do stuff. And at $200 a month, it's, as far as I'm concerned, it's free given the productivity levels I get out of it. Is OpenAI making money on me? Let me answer the question. They're not. I'm using it a lot. So I'm pretty sure I'm consuming more than $200 a month worth of GPU power. So is it just being subsidized? And on top of that, GPU power is effectively energy. And when we look at what's happening in the world at the moment, the cost of energy right now, certainly as of, early April 2026, energy costs are spiking. So my $200 a month is going less far for the data centers than it was before. So is it actually real? Is it really that cheap, or is it just being subsidized?
It's a complicated question. There's a lot of answers to that. I think one, as of yesterday, I just saw a chart that shows revenue at Anthropic and OpenAI kind of hockey sticking, and it was flatlined for a long time.
Right.
Another part of that is that
Before you go there,
Yeah.
why? What's caused the hockey stick?
I know that OpenAI added ads into the free tier.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
Right. I'm not on the free tier, so I haven't seen.
You're not
it.
on the free
Okay,
tier, so
yeah.
you haven't seen any ads. But yeah, they were roasted by I think it was Anthropic actually that came after them, and hilarious. You should watch the Super Bowl ads that Anthropic put out, where there's like human interactions, but one of the humans is a bot.
Okay.
So there's this one guy who's like he's the coach, and the other guy is trying to get in shape. And so the fitness coach is the bot, and whenever the other guy asks him a question, he starts giving him answers. And at the end, there's some clickbaity thing, or there's some ad that the guy reads out, and the other guy's confused, kind of like. So they got roasted, but apparently it's profitable.
I question that. I really question that, because I have an awareness of the GPU power required and the energy required to do what it's doing at the speed that it's doing. One of the things I have now, so I'm not seeing the ads. Actually, maybe the ads will push it into profitability for now. But the cost of buying those ads right now is probably quite high, and that's going to commoditize. So I don't see that as a great long-term strategy. What I have noticed OpenAI doing to me is, which was really interesting. I saw this for the first time a few days ago. It was saying this task you've been working on, which was basically a thread with ChatGPT, has taken 2.6 hours or something like that. It told me. Said I can do this in half the time, but it's going to cost you double the tokens.
No, take your time.
It's great. Yeah, well, in the end, I didn't need it quickly, so there wasn't a solution for me. But I can see the new model becoming charge more money, get it done faster. That I think that's where they're going, and I think this is where OpenAI they're trying to. It's obvious from seeing things like that and you seeing ads, they're trying to figure it out right now because they can't keep raising money at those valuations. So it's a very quick progression to, okay, now we need to monetize this quickly, and they're trying lots of different strategies for that. But I thought that was an interesting one. It's double the price, half the time. And I'm sure it doesn't double the price to double the speed. It's maybe 1.5x.
They're at a point now where I'm sure their investors are like, come on, guys. Like,
what the hell?
Yeah, exactly. I didn't mean to suggest they were profitable, but the chart that I saw showed revenue starting to tick up.
Revenue will tick up, but at what cost? And again, against a backdrop of energy prices going. I mean, can you imagine what it costs to run a data center now compared to 6 months ago?
Oh, totally.
So I totally get the revenue graph going up, and I can see why. I am thinking about sustainable business model. Where is that coming from? And can that be sustained on my $200 a month plan?
There's so many competing forces here. There's a lot happening that gives me the sense that prices are about to go up for consumers of these frontier models. And like part of it is the supply shortage. Like people can't buy GPUs. I see people on Twitter all the time asking, do you have a guy? It's almost like they're buying drugs. Like, do you have a guy that has some good GPUs, right? And so they can't buy them fast enough. Meanwhile, the demand is actually through the roof. Like people like to compare this to the .NET bubble, right? But the problem with the .NET bubble is that the demand wasn't outstripping the supply. Like they built too much, fiber, and then growth wasn't coming fast enough. But with AI, the demand is far ahead of the supply. So there's a lot of people out there saying, take my money, give me GPUs, I need more inference. And it's just not available. And another aspect of that is that, well, if it's not available to the general public, it's probably also quite costly to these people training their models, which means these models are the worst that they'll ever be. Because if they could just have more GPUs and throw more money at it, they'd be far better today than they already are. And they're already amazing.
This has a lot of similarities with computing in the 60s and the 70s, which was timeshare. So it was all client server. So I would have my terminal, I'd have a dumb terminal, and I'd be basically renting a time slice of CPU on a mainframe computer, and I'd be doing my work, and I could throw more money at it and buy more CPUs.
It's like buying ramen in Japan.
It's just like buying ramen. I get my ticket, and it used to be computers would be in a room. They'd need the size of a room, and they would be multi-user, and you'd have multiple people using them and buying a time slice. And it's not a lot different to actually how ChatGPT and other frontier models are working right now. And I wonder whether we're seeing that start to commoditize to the point where it's on my laptop now. And we've got one of our engineers, Adrian, he's got a new laptop, which we just got him because he's doing a lot of AI stuff locally and he's training models. And it was an expensive laptop. It was about $4,500 or something we had to pay to get this thing, but pounds.
6K.
Yeah, but it's the M5 Pro Max chip, and I think he has 48 gig of RAM or something like that. But it's incredible what he can do on this machine using frontier models completely locally. Qwen, the IBM Granite ones are fantastic.
How many billion parameters are these?
I think Qwen is 32 billion.
You can run a 32 billion on that?
Not in full. It's quantized.
It's quantized, okay.
So he's not running full 32-bit, but I think you can go down to 8-bit now, and actually it's still more than good enough for the tasks he's looking to accomplish. So I wonder whether the answer is the frontier model companies don't have a sustainable business model, and they're screwed. And actually, it's just going to commoditize to the point where, well, it'll be on our watch in 20 years' time, but maybe next year, we just all have this on our laptop. I wonder whether the long term is the client server model that we have with Claude, OpenAI. In the long run, that's dead. And actually, it's all going to be on our laptop, open source weight models doing a very, very good job locally, gives us privacy, makes it much easier to govern. The compliance people are happy with it because the customer data isn't going anywhere. My laptop becomes safe again.
Yeah. No, I think they see the writing on the wall, which is why, OpenAI in particular is launching a number of different products trying to make money. They tried Sora, for example. Claude has Claude Code. They each have a number of different bets that they're placing, trying to figure out what is the actual model, because I think they see that the price is going to go to zero over time. And as the price goes to zero over time, there's so much software that's unwritten in the world. There's so many companies out there that could write their own software that don't do it because it's expensive to hire a developer. But if you could just speak English and harness this like infinitely available human intelligence, I think it's just natural that there's going to be thousands or millions of times the software that exists right now in the future relatively quickly.
So we were talking about that earlier, right? And we were talking about exactly as you've just said it. So anyone that can speak English in theory could build a software product now. And actually, when we were talking about that, I think both of us agreed that we're not there yet, because the only way we've been able to make that work when experimenting with that and seeing that is having a background in engineering. So if we didn't know how to write software, I don't think we'd be able to prompt a model well enough to be able to build software. So I don't think we're quite at a point yet where anyone can create software. We agree on that, right?
Depending on how complex the software is.
Well, let's just say a moderately, anyone can build Hello World, I have no doubt. So let's say just a moderately, something that's genuinely useful is probably right now going to require an engineer to know how to prompt it, how to check its work, and all of those things that make great software products. So when do you think how long away are we from complete non-engineering person being able to build a moderately complicated, useful piece of software?
I feel like UI is the last frontier. Yeah. I think, and it comes back to what was the LLM trained on? I think LLMs are fantastic at interpreting product requirements and understanding functional specs and building out code and functions and libraries and things like that. You can see the tires start to skid when you ask it to build, and you went through this with a pet project you were working on, like build me a front end for this.
It was so horrible what it built. Right. But the data model and the functional engine of what it built was frankly beautiful, well documented. There was a test case for it was all full functional testing. It was a phenomenal package in terms of the engine, but the front end UI, I mean, it looked like a 4-year-old had created it. It was horrific.
Yeah, but I think this is just another stop on the way to AGI where, do you remember AI couldn't do hands for a long time? And everybody was like, I told you. All the naysayers were like, game over, can't do hands. Let's go back to coding manually. And they fixed the hands. There weren't enough hands in the training sets because most people don't have their hands visible in photos. But they found a way. I don't know if they used synthetic or they just found a special training set or they took a bunch of photos of people's hands, but they fixed it. And I feel like the same thing is going to happen. They went for the low-hanging fruit. The low-hanging fruit was
text-based.
Let's just ransack Stack Overflow, right?
Yeah.
And they got all that data.
Yeah.
And so they built the thing that they had copious amounts of data for. And now once we're at the point where, okay, it can do APIs, it can do backend, it can do database, the next frontier is UI. To me, UI is just the next hands problem.
When you get into those realms of design, and we've talked about this before, you said to me, first time we had a conversation on camera like this and we were talking about AI, I think you were talking about taste as being like the last bastion of, that's the thing that the model hasn't got yet. And I am still required as a human in the loop because I have taste and I can make a judgment decision on about design. So for the machines to start to produce good design, front end stuff, someone's going to have to curate the data set that it's trained on, right? You can't just throw crap at it. It's just going to continue to produce junk. So do we need a high design, designer curated data set that we can train models on? How's it going to happen? Because there's a lot of crap.
I would like to amend that statement because that was made several months ago. In AI years, that was years. So I would say that AI now probably has better taste than the average developer. The new models, at least. I'm talking Opus 4.6. By the way, they're coming out with Mythos, which I'm really excited to try too. But no, but I agree that taste is a major issue in software, and I think that as the cost of code goes to zero and coding is like largely solved as a problem, what happens to the developer, and this is the history of software development, is it started out with punch cards. Right. And then from punch cards, assembly language, and then on compilable, interpretable languages. And now we're at the point where the programming language is English, right? You're constantly climbing this ladder of abstractions, one rung at a time. And I think the last frontier for developers is it's not that you're going to be replaced. It's that you now have to climb up one more rung and become an architect, right? Speak in English and be very clear about how the software is supposed to work, what it's supposed to look like, what the functional specs are, what the edge cases are. You just climb up that rung and you become an architect. So I think the ones that are going to make it are the ones that climb up that final rung.
And that's hard, right? You make it sound easy. I'll just climb up an extra rung. It's very hard to find engineers that are actually able to make that climb up, because architecting, and in particular articulating an architecture, is actually a skill. Kind of comes back to prompting and writing a very good quality prompt. It's a skill that people need to learn, and they don't have a lot of time left to learn it. They need to upskill quite quickly, unless maybe AI itself can be the middleman and an engineer can do a half-assed version of a description of something, and then the AI itself can maybe correct it. I don't know. So your argument on this one, on UI, is you think the models are getting better at it?
I think they're getting better at it. I just think it wasn't a priority until now, because we're working through use cases in a logical step. The first use case is, can it even write a function? Can it write a line of code, right? The original AI was autocomplete. I start typing and you just kind of guess what comes next. That was mind-blowing. And then it's like, okay, I can actually write the whole function. And it's like, okay, I can actually write a whole module. Now it's a whole program. I mean, it's inconceivable to me that the final boss of agentic program is somehow the UI, and it can't work that out. I just think it needs the appropriate amount of training data to be able to produce stuff that looks good.
And I agree with that. I'm saying I think that training data itself needs to probably be curated by a human who's extremely well skilled in that interaction design task.
Yeah.
Or you steal it.
Yeah.
So you take a company that's done it. Apple is a good example. Generally speaking, they do interaction design very well, UI design very well. Maybe you just take everything Apple's ever built and you use that as your training data set. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, data curator now I think is a new job category. Like, we are in desperate need of people to categorize data sets.
Right.
Experts.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, no, that's an interesting one. Data curator, that's a job that's going to be around, well, for at least another 6 months. That's a job that's going to be around. I was just thinking, as you were talking about autocomplete, and I remember seeing that for the first time, where I started typing a function And at some point, pretty early on, it's like, oh yeah, I know what you want, and it writes it for you. That was only 3 years ago.
Yeah.
Kind of scary, right? To now, I'm not even writing the function. I'm just describing the application.
You know what's hilarious to me is the speed at which we just we assume this stuff is table stakes. We get so used to magic, and it's as if imagine your ChatGPT being taken away from you now. Like how far that would set you back, but at the same time, you sort of take it for granted.
Yeah.
Like, oh, I'll just ask ChatGPT that. My son who's now 9 years old, like whenever there's a question he doesn't know the answer, he's like, oh, just ask ChatGPT. It's not magical to him. It's just he's kind of growing up with it.
Well, I think, again, it's another good argument for saying we need to move away from client server. I need it on my laptop because the truth of it is you can't take it away from me now. That's like taking away coffee. I'm just not standing for it. So the only thing I can really do to protect myself and make sure I always have it is actually to have it running locally. Open weights models running on my laptop. That's the only way you're not taking it away from me. So
it's funny that you talk. I mean, it makes me think about like basic needs and the poverty line when you talk about you're not taking it away from me. Like the poverty line used to be defined like in the 1800s by you don't die early.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And it used to be based on calories. But the poverty line today is not calories. It's connectivity. It's like, do you have access to internet? Do you have access to quality LLMs? It's going to be the next step. It's going to be considered inhumane in a few years for somebody to not have access to at least a decent tier of ChatGPT or Claude.
I agree, and I think the two are related. Your first comment was 200 years ago. Was like you live longer. I think those that have access to the best quality LLMs probably will live longer. I think that's a fact.
Totally. Could you imagine your ChatGPT history being leaked? Talking about live longer, all the health questions you've asked. You said earlier, like you're more honest with your software than you are with, or you're more.
I'm
you're more
not
forthcoming.
No, I can imagine we were talking about therapists and AI therapists, and I just got to thinking. I think people are more open and honest. I think people would be more open and honest with a machine than they might be with a human because they don't feel like they're being judged. So I'm open and honest with a machine in the sense that I don't feel like, am I asking a dumb question? I never feel like that with a machine.
Totally. And oftentimes it's like, this is something I should know. And it's embarrassing that you don't know. And it's like, I wouldn't ask somebody, but I'll just chat GPT it. No judgment.
No judgment. But Google
delete
was
the
the
chat
same.
after.
Yeah, that's right. but Google was the same. You'd Google stuff and you'd be thinking, thank God I don't have to ask a human this because it feels like a dumb question. But I don't think there's anything in my ChatGPT history that I'd be worried about leaking. Most of it's pretty boring, functional, basic stuff. It's doing things that I can do myself. I just don't want to. I don't want to spend the time doing it. It's making me what AI has brought to me is it's at least 8 to 10x my efficiency by enabling me to describe a task, which generally speaking I can do more rapidly than doing the task. And so that's it's not that I'm having to ask it things I feel I should know all the time, and that happens occasionally. But it's more I'm just simply describing something that I could go away and do myself, but it's boring, so I don't want to, or I feel it'll just be more efficient than me, and it'll just do it quicker.
Yeah. I think my experience is that it's not just making me more productive, and it's kind of hard to measure productivity. It's not really a one-dimensional metric, but for me, what I'm noticing is that I'm doing things that I wouldn't have done before. I'm creating very elaborate functional specs, right? And it's not just that, like, okay, I'm taking the tasks that I used to do in the past, and now they take me 10% of the time. I'm doing more. The scope is widened a bit for what I'm able to do. I can go into detail with the functional specs in a way which would have taken a long time before. I can create, a very nicely structured 25-page spec in 30 minutes or an hour, which I wouldn't have done in the past. Do you find that you're also like widening the scope of things that you've done before?
100% is a leading question because you know the answer. Yeah, 100%. So I had this need for, I had a pet project. I had a need for a mobile app on my iPhone. I've not used, I've built an iPhone app in the past, maybe in the early days, 10 years ago, using Xcode, but I'm not familiar with the language Swift, and I haven't even run Xcode for 10 years, so I don't know what I'm doing anymore. For the first time, I built end-to-end, I have it on my phone today, an app in about 4 hours from description.
You built that today?
I built it on Sunday. Oh,
Okay.
yeah, the thing I showed you earlier.
End to end?
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
Okay.
In one day. I
Okay.
did it on a Sunday. In fact, in truth, I think it was, because Codex tells me, I think it was 2.7 hours of interaction time.
Okay.
So actually 2.7 hours of my time, a day total elapsed time, it doing stuff and me going have cups of coffee and stuff like that. One day from literally Codex, this was OpenAI's Codex, installing Xcode for me and building it and setting up my whole environment, which was one of the big nightmares I always had with Xcode. Is I don't know what my developer certificate is and all of that nonsense. It did all of that for me. I gave it a description. It built it. The UI was, as we've been talking about, that was the downside. The application engine it built was extremely good. The AI, the UI was not so great. But I've managed to iterate. You've seen it. I managed to iterate it to a point where it's pretty good now. But that was the hard bit. But I can see if AI can get better at generating those types of user interfaces, then yeah, the whole thing would have probably been end to end a few hours.
Right.
And we're talking about quite a complex app. This is not a simple.
And you're
product.
not even looking at the code.
I'm looking at it out of curiosity, and I'm looking at it to make sure it's not going down rabbit holes.
Okay.
And I had to stop. This is why I was saying earlier, I needed to be an engineer to be able to do what I did, because I could see it was going off in a direction that was bad, and I know that direction is bad as an engineer. That's why a non-engineer would have probably taken a lot longer than it took me, because I was able to stop it doing certain things. But I was doing a little bit of code reviewing, mostly out of curiosity. I did get to a point where it was like, just tell me what you're about to do, and then I would have it do it, and then I would say, describe what you just did, and I would have a look at the two, and I would see whether they match. Just to say, did you build what you told me you were going to build? And after I started getting comfortable with that model, I stopped actually looking at code. And I was looking at more, I suppose, the equivalent of summarization of architecture. Tell me what you architected, which is the main thing you want to know as an engineering manager, isn't it? It's like I don't want to have a look at every line of code you wrote. We might have a look at some basic principles of how you name variables and stuff like that. But beyond that, what I'm much more interested in is how did you architect it?
So you moved up that last rung.
Oh, totally.
Yeah.
Totally, yeah.
I think you're kind of, given the way that you're working it feels like you are living in the future state of programming.
Yeah, I think so. I think we might have talked before about this concept of applications on demand. And that's kind of what happened, right? I had a need for an application, didn't exist. I spent a Sunday and I created it for myself. That's the next evolution of that is the application gets created for me. I'd almost say I speak to my phone and I say I need to know what the weather is in the following countries, and I need it rendered in a particular way, whatever my problem is. And it gets built in a few seconds, and boom, it's available.
So English is the programming language now. It's almost as if the code is assembly.
It may as well be.
You don't even need to look at it for the most part, or eventually you won't need to look at it.
Eventually,
anymore.
I think that's the case. Although that takes a huge leap in trust.
Yeah.
So I still don't fully trust it in the sense that I had a look under the bonnet on occasion, but I was developing trust. It was developing a trust relationship with me, because in the reviews that I had, I was like, damn, you did a pretty good job of that. And actually, I hadn't realized it had been building unit tests. I didn't ask it to do that. So actually, I ended up not just with the software, but with a full set of unit tests. And actually, there was a separate side app with a test framework built within it. That bit like blew my mind. So it was like, I thought I was hacking together a POC, and actually it was building me a production class product.
Fantastic. Wow.
Well, where that leads on to then is, we've talked about this before, the future state of engineering. So what happens to engineers now? So previously, I needed an app. Let's say it needed to be cross-platform. I'm hiring 3 or 4 engineers. How has that just changed now? I'm not hiring 3 or 4 engineers ever again to build an application. It's been made very clear to me that's not necessary. So is it now 1 engineer? Is it a sales guy with a technical background?
What's the core set of skills in your mind that you would need to be able to do what you did?
So in my example, I'm imagining I'm the customer. So, but in a real world commercial example, it would be the skill is someone that needs a skill is an ability to be customer facing, being able to collect and articulate either requirements or the customer's problem. Because actually what I found is AI, in my experimentations on Sunday, I was finding that I could describe a problem and it was doing a pretty good job at presenting 10 options for me as possible solution directions. I found that quite almost like using it as a sounding board. But I think you need to be customer facing to be able to collect at least the problem, if not a set of requirements. Being able to articulate it really well. That's where
Good communication.
Yeah, communicate. Because I've been using AI for since GPT 3.5 was when I really started using it in earnest. So I've got quite good at prompting, and I've learned it's a little bit like when Google first came around. I remember the early 2001, when I first started using Google, and I was finding the question you asked Google, you needed to frame it well.
Yeah.
These days, particularly on a mobile phone keyboard, I don't care. I don't care about my typos. Autocorrect always screwing me up. Doesn't matter. I just hit search and it corrects it. And it goes, I think you meant, and then it gives you, and it's fixing my sloppy typing. I can be sloppy as hell. I can be really human with it. And I'm finding prompting is like the early days of Google at the moment. You actually have to put in quite a high quality prompt. So I've over the last couple of years, because I've been doing that a lot, I think I've got quite good at articulating to an AI system. But I can see, just like Google got better and better and better, humans are just sloppy, and I'm going to deal with that. I think AI is going in the same direction.
I think there's a secret hidden skill in there that I would call empathy. You're able to understand how the thing works, and you're able to work with it. A lot of developers that I see kind of, they do the classical gotcha tests and say, like, how many R's in strawberry? And it comes back and it says 5 or 6. It's like, how could I possibly trust it coding if it can't get the number of R's? The most basic thing, right? So they kind of scoff at it. And I think part of that is because they've got their identity too tied up with being, a coder. But I think empathy is really, really important, because you're able to kind of figure out, how does this thing actually work? How can I get the most out of it? How do I put my ego to the side? Yeah. And how do I accept that this thing is not really a substitute for human intelligence?
It's a tool.
It's a tool with a whole different type of intelligence from ours, which is a whole another topic in and of itself. I kind of think that we kind of anthropomorphize these LLMs a little bit too much, and it even seeps in with the language. Like, we talk about hallucinations. Like, they're not hallucinating when they give you the wrong answer. These things were literally trained to, they're glorified Markov chains. It's like, what's the next most probabilistic token? And as long as it's doing that, they're doing what they were told to do. Mm-hmm. But we see them as humans. They're supposed to serve us, right? They're supposed to answer our questions perfectly. And so what we call hallucinations is just them doing their job.
I think you're absolutely right. And it's about, you recognize it's a tool, and that empathy, it's actually me just wanting to get the best out of the tool.
Yeah.
That's what that is. So I'm being optimistic with it. I want it to succeed, because it's going to make my life easier if it succeeds. So I'll be helpful to it in order to help it succeed. And I think you're right. I think it takes a pessimistic mindset to try and deliberately trip it up with a question like, how many R's in strawberry, rather than the optimistic view of, how can I make this successful for me?
Right. Which, this is a fun game that I play from time to time, is I try and mentally flip the anthropomorphosis. So kind of anti-anthropomorphosis. If I were an LLM, for example, what would my system prompt be? Kind of look at people as if they were LLMs, right?
Yeah.
And try and kind of
figure out
what's his system prompt? Yeah. Why is he behaving like this?
Yeah, it's really interesting.
What's his training set?
It is. Yeah, that's an interesting question for a psychologist, because there's going to be a lot of fundamental truth in that. Is what's my basic training from when I was very young and little, or what's gone in, is that, because that is our system prompt is probably baked in by age 6 or 7, right?
Yeah.
And that's it now for the rest of your life. That's your personality.
When you talk about the person who tries to trick it with, the trick question, and then they're superior now because the LLM couldn't figure out how many R's in strawberry. Like, how do I fine tune that system prompt so that it's getting more out of it?
God. Yeah, we're getting into dangerous territory there. How do we retrain the humans to be more AI-like?
Yeah. But there's, going back to my point earlier about there's so much software that's unwritten out there. This is one of the reasons why I kind of pay no attention to the job destruction claims, because I feel like, capitalism is going to save us in the end, because capitalism always wants more.
Mm-hmm.
Could you imagine at Umony if we said, we're going to fire all of our engineers, we're going to replace them with agents, and we're going to do the same with less? Well, there's going to be another company out there that's going to be willing to do the same with the same, or more with maybe the same, or more with a little bit more. And the capitalistic forces are going to force the competition. We're not going to just be able to say, we'll lay off everybody and continue doing what we're doing, but software development will be free, because somebody else is going to be willing to spend more and innovate more.
Yeah, as long as there's money flowing into that process. There
needs to be an aspect of profitability behind it.
Yeah, there needs to be an aspect of profitability. And is there an inflection point that happens at some point in the future where that's no longer meaningful or important, because the machines are doing the majority of the work and we're all on universal basic income, or something like that happens? That will change it all again, I guess.
Yeah, we'd have to restructure society. But I think it's going to happen piecemeal.
Yeah.
The other day I went out for a walk and I took a notepad with me. I've never done this before in the past, but kind of I stopped drinking coffee and I kind of slowed down, and I've got more time, and my mind is a little bit more placid. And I thought, why am I going to bring my laptop? Let me bring a notepad. So I go and I found a cafe and I sat down, and it was such a pleasure to go a lot slower and to write down my thoughts. All the while knowing that when I got back home, I'll just take a snapshot. I'll take a photo of the notebook pages, OCR it, and now, my whole experience is now searchable, right? And can be formatted. It can be shared,
deduped.
And so I think one of the promises of AI is that not only is it going to make you more productive, it's actually going to afford you the possibility of having more human experiences, or if you want to be less productive. But then you can go into and out of the digital matrix whenever you want. Because prior to this, like, what am I going to do with 10 pages of notes? It's going to sit in a drawer somewhere.
Of course it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, nothing's going to happen with it. Out of interest on the AI side, what's your daily drive now? Is it Claude?
Depends what I'm doing. If it's for building products, writing code, it's definitely Claude 4.6, Claude Opus 4.6. Although the new model is coming out.
Mythos.
I haven't had good luck with any of the other models.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Claude for coding. What do you use for non-coding? Are you still using OpenAI?
I've got the pro subscription for just
ChatGPT,
general questions and stuff like that. Yeah, it's totally fine. Yeah.
And when you take a picture of your notes and you scan it in, is that using Claude, or that's ChatGPT?
ChatGPT, the phone app.
Yeah. Okay.
So just take a picture, put it in. Take a second picture, put it in, and say, hey, combine these notes and make sense of what I'm saying. Because like my writing is chicken scratch and my ideas are all over the place. And it's just synthesize it. And it comes out looking like a college essay. You feel quite proud until you realize you hadn't done 10% of the work.
Well, you did the thinking, you did the reflecting.
That's the important part. You're up that rung.
Yeah.
Right?
You're up that rung.
Don't forget to like and subscribe, or have your open Claude just go and click those buttons.
Don't forget to like and subscribe, and use OpenAI to click those buttons.